He never let any woman stand within 3 feet of him, until she walked into his life, broken, abandoned, hiding a secret that could destroy him. Stay till the end for the twist you'll never see coming. And don't forget to subscribe this channel for more heart-shaking miracle stories. A cold wind roared through the tallest glass tower of Orion City, slicing across the terrace where Adrian Valtor, the infamous, untouchable CEO, stood like a marble statue, his icy gray eyes reflecting the storm inside him. People said he wasn't born human, that he was carved from frost and discipline, incapable of warmth, incapable of love, incapable of letting any woman stand near him without recoiling like he'd been burned. The entire business world feared him, not only because of his unmatched power but because of the eerie rumor that every woman who tried to get close to him ended up mysteriously disappearing from his company. No one knew the truth of those disappearances, and no one dared to ask. Adrian lived by a singular rule: never get close, never trust, never care. But fate sometimes chooses the most unlikely moment to shatter a man's unbreakable walls. It happened on one rain-soaked evening, when a small figure collapsed in front of his speeding car outside the Valtor headquarters. Adrian slammed the brakes, cursing under his breath as he stepped out, prepared to call security and deal with the nuisance, but the second his eyes fell on her, mud-soaked, trembling, her clothes torn, her eyes wide with the kind of fear no human should ever carry, his world tilted dangerously. She was just a girl, maybe 18 or 19, with bruises on her arms and desperation in her voice as she whispered, "Please, don't send me back." Adrian felt something crack inside him, something he didn't even know was still alive. He should have walked away, should have ordered someone to remove her from his path, but instead he lifted her into his arms, ignoring how his chest tightened painfully at the contact. Her name was Alara, and she had been abandoned. No, thrown away, by the very family that should have protected her. They'd framed her for a theft she didn't commit, chased her out like a stray animal, and left her with nothing but fear clinging to her skin. Adrian didn't believe in charity, but something about her, maybe her trembling voice, maybe the way she looked at him like he wasn't a monster, made him take her into his penthouse. He told himself it was temporary, just until she recovered. But temporary has a strange way of becoming destiny. In the days that followed, Alara moved around his cold penthouse with silent footsteps, like she feared breaking something, like she feared breaking him. She never asked questions, never tried to pry into the shadows he hid behind, never tried to get close. And ironically, that made Adrian watch her even more. She cooked small meals for herself at night thinking he was asleep. She cleaned the balcony every morning as if wiping away the stains of her past. She stared at the moon like she was begging it for answers. Slowly, dangerously, Adrian found himself drawn to her fragile strength. His employees noticed the impossible first: how he no longer snapped at women in meetings, how he didn't flinch when his female assistant handed him documents, how he no longer demanded distance like it was life and death. Rumors spread. Who was she? What spell had she cast on him? Meanwhile, Alara carried a secret she didn't dare reveal, a secret tied to the disappearances linked to the Valtor Corporation, a secret connected not to Adrian himself but to someone lurking in his shadows. One night, when thunder cracked the sky open, Adrian returned home late and found Alara standing in his study, frozen, holding an old photograph of a woman with the same storm-gray eyes as his mother, a woman he had believed dead for over 15 years. "Where did you get this?" he demanded, his voice cold enough to shatter glass. Alara trembled, her eyes filling with tears as she confessed she knew the woman. She had seen her alive, but held captive by someone tied to the Valtor Empire. The revelation hit Adrian like a bullet. The reason he feared women, the reason he distanced himself, the reason he believed every woman brought danger, was all because of the trauma of losing his mother and the lies his father had fed him. Alara told him she was forced onto the streets after overhearing something she wasn't supposed to hear. The truth about the disappearances at Valtor, a truth orchestrated not by Adrian but by his uncle, Damien Valtor, who was preparing to overthrow Adrian and seize the company. Damien had been abducting women connected to Adrian, not romantically, but professionally, to frame Adrian as unstable, preparing the world for the ultimate scandal, the fall of the untouchable CEO. Alara had overheard Damien ordering his men to make the new girl vanish too, referring to Adrian's assistant. She tried to warn the assistant, but Damien's men caught her first, beat her, and left her in the woods to die. She escaped, ran blindly in the rain, and collapsed in front of Adrian's car. The moment Adrian heard Damien's name, his blood ran ice cold. Years of paranoia, years of emotional walls, years of being told women were dangerous, they were all lies crafted to isolate him, weaken him, make him controllable. Alara was the first person to shatter that illusion. But her confession came with a warning. Damien knew she was alive and had already tracked her location. Even as she spoke, men in black coats were approaching the penthouse. Adrian acted instantly, grabbing her hand and pulling her into the emergency exit stairwell. The alarms the security team had disabled, under Damien's bribe, didn't go off. The entire building felt like a trap waiting to swallow them whole. As they fled down the stairs, Alara winced with every step, her bruises reopening, but she refused to let go of Adrian's hand. "Don't slow down because of me," she whispered breathlessly. "I'm not letting you die for me." Adrian squeezed her hand tighter. "You're the first person worth dying for," he growled. They reached the parking basement just as Damien's men cornered them. A gunshot echoed through the empty space, missing Adrian's head by inches. Alara gasped, gripping his arm, but Adrian pushed her behind him and stared coldly at the man holding the gun. "Tell Damien," Adrian said, voice almost terrifyingly calm, "that if he wants to take everything from me, he'll have to do it himself." The man lunged forward, but in that split second, Alara did something reckless. She stepped in front of Adrian. Another shot fired, grazing her shoulder. Adrian roared her name, catching her before she hit the ground. Something inside him snapped, something feral and unstoppable. He fought like a man possessed, like a man who had finally found something to protect. By the time security forces loyal to Adrian arrived, the basement was a battlefield of fallen men. Adrian carried Alara into his car, his heart pounding like it never had in his life. At the hospital, as the doctors treated her wound, he sat outside trembling, not with fear, but with the unbearable realization that this fragile girl had become the only warmth in his frozen life. When she woke up, Adrian was sitting beside her holding her hand, his guard shattered, his voice softer than she had ever heard. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "Not you." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered back, "But I'm nobody." He shook his head slowly. "You're the only person who ever saw me as human." Their moment was cut short when the police arrived, with shocking news. Damien Valtor had fled the country, but not before leaving behind a cryptic message addressed to Adrian. "If you want the truth about your mother, find me." Alara and Adrian froze as the officer handed over a sealed envelope found in Damien's abandoned office. Inside was a photograph of Adrian's mother, alive but frail, sitting in a dimly lit room somewhere unknown. On the back of the photo was a chilling message: "She has something you need. Something I want. Come alone." Adrian's heart twisted with a mixture of hope and dread. Damien had taken everything from him: trust, peace, innocence, but now Adrian had something Damien could never crush: Alara. She touched his hand gently. "You don't have to face him alone," she whispered. Adrian looked at her with a newfound fire in his eyes. "Alara, you're the only person I want beside me." And with that, the cold CEO who never let any woman within 3 feet of him finally allowed someone into the deepest, darkest corners of his life. Little did they know, the journey ahead would unravel secrets darker than either of them imagined. But for the first time, Adrian wasn't afraid of the darkness. He had something worth fighting for. Someone worth living for. Someone who had tamed the untouchable.